Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out-of-this-world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
Hello, sweet pleasure seekers. You have joined me tonight on The Pleasure Zone. And that's, a pretty fun place to be. For the most part, we talk a lot about sex and pleasure and bodies and the 5.5 billion different ways to enjoy our lives and our bodies. And every once in a while, I sneak in an episode that will gift you information about how to unlock your body and your life from places where you're not experiencing pleasure, whether it's from places where you may have been experiencing disease in your body that does not contribute to pleasure, or whether it's different things like traumas or different things like emotional abuses. And today, in particular, I have two guests that will be joining me as we talk about changing the trauma of sexual abuse. And I create that title as changing because for me, it's not change the trauma, it is changing the trauma. It is an active action that's going to be pretty much ongoing in your life and have different kind of angles and perspectives as things are in the mode of changing. It seems more and more to me that people are bringing forth their stories of sexual abuse, and for some of those stories have contributed to greater awareness and sense of community. And for others, with others who have suffered as well, it's kind of like, well, you've suffered, I've suffered, and we've created these great, for some people, great communities where people can connect with each other and move forward. And for some, the trauma and abuse continues. And sometimes the trauma and abuse continues in ways that aren't so obvious. It might not be that the abuse is going on, not that somebody's being sexually abused right now, but that it's being held in their bodies and their minds. So it goes on for them in different ways. And guys, I got to tell you, this episode is not an episode where I claim to have any answers necessarily, but I am really excited to share tools. I'm really excited to share with you tools that my guests have gathered as well that are going to share their tools, and really looking forward to how we can change and change the energy around the tragedy of sexual abuse, and how we can actually change it into something where we're not just survivors, where we're thrivers, where we're creating our lives in ways that probably are unrecognizable to people. A lot of times people would assume that if there's been sexual abuse or trauma that you have a victim story that you can't move past. And I invite anybody who has been a victim or is currently being victimized, has gone through any sexual abuse in their life or is currently experiencing that, to listen to this show. And if you know somebody who has gone through this or is going through this, I encourage you to share this show with others, because there's going to be such amazing, valuable information. And if you're listening right now as we're live, direct them to come on over to inspiredchoicesnetwork.com to join us in the chat room if you have questions, and also that you can call in. We have numbers for the U.S. and Canada that you can call, and we can share those with you as well. So I'd like to really introduce you to my first guest. Guest is my mom, and I'm just going to go with her as my mom for today. She's got a fancy new name, so I'm going to go with my mom. And for those of you who are avid listeners of The Pleasure Zone, you've heard her be a guest with me on 2 other occasions, or possibly 3, 2 that I remember distinctly. And I have another guest tonight, Miss Jessica. And these are both 2 women who work with people on a regular basis with changing the trauma of sexual abuse. And it's strange, but for some reason, the area that we live in seems to be rampant with it. And I don't know that it's necessarily rampant, but that I see a lot of it, because that's what comes into my office a lot. And it really struck me the other day that this conversation not only needs to be had on a more regular basis. I know people are having these conversations, but I'm thinking there's just so many more conversations that can be had. And to open the doors so that people know that there are multiple resources available to them. And tonight I'm introducing you to two resources that I know about. So Miss Jess, welcome to the Pleasure Zone. And
thank you.
And I'm so grateful that you had both the tenacity of choosing to say yes to this show and the courage to share your expertise with us. Because sometimes even having a career where you do help people through this, sometimes even that is something that we want to hide. We're like, I don't know that I want the whole world to know that I'm a rebel rouser and that I want to change the world. So sometimes we hide those things. And to my mom, I'm totally grateful for her being on this show. She's actually worked with people on the other scale. She's worked with people on both sides of the story. She's worked with people in prisons who have been perpetrators, and she's worked with people whose, lives have and bodies have experienced sexual abuse. And I say lives because sometimes people are disconnected from their bodies and they just make it a thing about their life and not really even recognize that their body has been affected, or vice versa. It's a strange and weird thing. But so I want to welcome you both. And I have a question, actually, I want to start to pose out here for everybody listening. The title itself, Changing the Trauma of Sexual Abuse. There's actually so much content just in that title that's kind of phenomenal. And Jess, I'm just wondering for you, what is it that when you're working with somebody, and you're looking to change something with them in terms of the trauma of sexual abuse, how do you define and how do you recognize trauma? How do you know what that is when you're working with somebody?
Well, can you hear me? You can hear me all right? Okay.
We can.
It's a great question, and it's one of those questions that can be tricky because it's, for me, all about feel. And I'm all about presence with people and being in the moment, because if you really truly want to create a space for someone that allows trust, you truly just have to be open and open book yourself and allow people to just be themselves. And therefore, I find a lot of great information and a lot of great energy comes from the things that you actually do not want to open up to others. And that is actually where a lot of magic happens, and people start truly being able to be themselves by actually allowing a lot of stuff that they've been hiding inside for a long time. It's very empowering letting it out. And I'm one of those people that I feel can be that oxygen for people and that green light that it's okay, it's a safe place, and we can talk. Because at the end of the day, it's about being human and allowing people to know that they're not alone and they're not the only one that has went through difficult times. So,
awesome.
Does that answer your question?
I think it answers even more than the question. So thank you for that, which is great. So I like that you started off with that it's a feeling for you, like that you can kind of acknowledge trauma by there's like a feeling for you. It's almost like your body has an instinct for trauma. And I wonder for how many other people that that's true. I'm actually going to divert this question to my mom because I know before I was training with her for the mitzvah technique, before that I would get sessions from her. And I remember her talking about some things about how she could recognize trauma in bodies. So, Mom, can you share with us how you know and how you recognize certain things of trauma with people in bodies, that you can kind of give us some clues about your awareness on what and how trauma is locked into bodies?
Wow. When I worked on you when I was a student of mitzvah, that was, I learned from my teacher, Nehemiah Cohen, and because I would be the only person in the class, he would tell me things that he didn't tell most other students. So I learned things that I passed on to my students, and it would be how somebody would walk, how somebody would move, and those are very subtle things, because we all walk down the street, we all move, we all get in and out of a chair. We do movement all day long. And it's how we do those things that tells our story. And we tell our story all the time, whether we do it verbally or subtly with movement. We are telling people our story. And I can't really define that on a radio show, because you actually have to see how people move, or the texture of their muscle will tell me things. Their bodies talk to my hands. Somebody said once they wished they could live in my brain. I said no one would want to live in my brain. For me, living in my brain is a big job. So somebody else living there wouldn't be fun. And so that was it's always changing as I learn more and more things about how bodies react to trauma and how immediate that is. That's, people think, well, this happened 20 years ago, shouldn't affect me, but it does. Or they think, well, that happened yesterday, I should be over it. And they're not. And until they do something to get through that or to respond to that, they're going to hold it on for a long time.
For sure. And I know that we all of us who are on the show, and even the producer who works with people as well as a coach, we all work with people who have experienced trauma. And trauma is such a wide topic. And so I've decided that I was going to hone in on the trauma specifically of sexual abuse. And I think in order to really understand how we're locking certainly the trauma of sexual abuse in our body, it might be helpful to get a perspective on what is actually sexual abuse. And I'm actually really curious to hear Miss Jess talk about this, because Miss Jess got some crazy experience with all kinds of training with people. Jess, can you share some of your certifications with us, and then let us know what you're aware of when it comes to sexual abuse?
Okay. Some of I have to say that my certifications absolutely vary. And they have over the past 10, 15 years, right from personal experiences through to, because we all come up to these roads and they all lead in different paths, and you think that perhaps, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Should I actually, should I have done something different? And why am I doing this course right now? And end up, you do a specific course, and you're like, this isn't a course. This is a lesson. This is a gift. This is magic. And I'm on my way to go to this workshop, and I'm taking a lady with me. Is the reason I'm taking it in the first place, because she would have went on her own. And next thing I know is she actually didn't show at all, and I still had to follow through. And I go, and it was a safe talk program, suicide alertness, and I have many thoughts going, why am I in this room right now? And then it was like, oh my goodness, I had to be in this room right now. There's so many people in my small community, in my family, in my circle of friends. I needed this certification. Next thing you know, I am, I'm a little more open to a certification that actually your mom, Danella, that's on the phone years ago, opened me up to the possibilities of just being me and listening to my intuition and certain things that come up. If it felt light, then you need to follow that. And then next thing I know, I'm taking my Access to Bar certification, and I use it on a daily basis on my son and my daughter and my husband, and then to friends and to family. I've been absolutely marinating myself the past 10 years with personal development programs, working with many world-renowned speakers that have truly touched my soul in so many different ways. And I've taken all of those different experiences and, I've dog-eared. I have literally wrote down in so many different books all these different takeaways. And I thought, why not take all of these hidden gems that I've learned along the way and give back? Because this is truly how I have allowed myself the freedom to live again, and live again in a whole new light, and be able to use my voice and create change within others by sharing this information from all of these several different workshops. And now I'm actually offering them myself out of both my home as well as working with kids in my community on kindness, gratitude, and finding your superpower. And with these incredible workshops and empowerment and restorement sessions I'm doing out of my home, these little things are actually allowing people to open up in a whole nother way and create change, not only within themselves, but within their family and within their community. And I'm just a small little ripple, and it's definitely making a massive difference. And so this is just one more stepping stone, and I was scared to death before I came on this call because I was so darn afraid of allowing other people, and I truly love being able to connect with people, but I still have that voice in my head of people saying, well, where do you truly get off thinking that it's okay for you to speak on a radio show on a subject as important as this? Who do you think you are? And then I'm like,
well,
I can do this.
Well, I think
you're
pretty much an authority. So, I kind of contacted you because I kind of think you're an authority on this. So, yeah, it wasn't like some kind of fluky, I'm just going to ask some random person to be on this show. No, I think I'm pretty aware of when somebody is an expert in field, whether they're aware of that they're an expert or not. But I'm so grateful that you have the courage to come on. And part of it, we're not really about sharing the story necessarily of the trauma on this show. What we are looking at is the tools of how to change it. And, with you saying about all the courses that you've taken, it's usually not like a one answer kind of solution, right? And it's usually not like one day you've got trauma in your body and the next day you don't. There is generally a bit of a process that goes on. And I'm definitely going to get my mom to share some of her information with that as well. And so when we do, we're actually going to be heading to our first commercial. So when we do come back, I'd like you guys to just ponder over the break what your thoughts on how do we define what is sexual abuse, and then what are some things that we will look at after on, like what are some of the first steps on moving out of that and moving past that. So You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today from the U.S., call 815-880-TALK. That's 815-880-8255. From Canada, dial 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Or send your questions or comments via email to info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Hello, sweet pleasure seekers. Welcome back to the Pleasure Zone. And tonight, we're diving into an unusual but a fantastic topic that, when we actually choose this, can actually create more pleasure in our lives. And that topic is changing the trauma of sexual abuse. And truly, in order to truly have pleasure in our lives, we have to be willing to change all the places where there has been trauma, or at least be working on them, and to be able to be looking at how we can receive something a little more than trauma in our bodies, something like ease, something like joy, even just to know that your body is and can be your friend and that you can trust it, which I think is oftentimes something that has to be relearned after sexual abuse. So learning how to retrust your body. And I actually give much credit to my mom for gifting me that because of the work that she does and that she invited me to learn. And so for me, I'll actually let my mom talk about that work because she's my teacher. And so, hi, Mom. So can you share with the audience some of the things that you learned and that you've used with people in your practice that have assisted them with releasing, we'll go with specifically with releasing sexual abuse and the trauma of that?
I would say that for most of my clients who have experienced some type of abuse, I don't know who hasn't experienced some type of abuse, sexual abuse. You know, sometimes there's a fine line between what people perceive has happened to them, so, or what they know has happened and what they're willing to speak about. But I know that getting bodies to move and releasing that deep, deep tension in their body. Now, for me, it was mitzvah body work. I had done a lot of other things in my life, but that was the beginning of something that really changed how I perceived my body, how I perceived how I should stand and walk and move, and that it was everyday movement. that I could integrate into things I did all the time instead of creating more and more pain in my body, which was like excruciating. I would say that, and there's a lot of exercises and stretches, but you have to have somebody who has the awareness of what they're teaching you. You just don't turn on a DVD and watch this without somebody making sure you're doing it correctly, and that if you need some explanation of why your body can't do it, because sometimes when people have had especially sexual abuse, their body doesn't want to move a certain way because it's going to keep itself safe. And so to have somebody there to talk you through that, why your body won't move or why it can't move, and not like when people come in groups of exercise classes, which I used to do a lot of, they would compare each other. I even had a class of women who were 85 to 90 years old, and they were trying to outdo each other. That was never the point. And even with, with abuse, I think that people start to shut down. They'll go to the back of the class. They'll do certain things to keep themselves safe. And so they need to know that they're in a safe place. And that, to me, is the really crucial thing, is people need to know that they're in a safe place and that they're honored and that they're valued. That those things, to me, are the things that are really important, that people know that they have come into a safe place.
I totally agree. Yeah, really, really well, and it simplifies it so much that there are movements that can release the body for sure. There are also movements that can fully traumatize the body when you're not being directed by somebody who has like some experience, for sure. I have worked on bodies who have been re-traumatized, who have people who have actually had been sexually assaulted by healthcare providers. So they think they're in a safe environment, but they've actually stepped into a place where then the massage therapist raped them, which really always impresses me when somebody is willing to then come to me for a session after they've experienced something like that in an environment that's similar to what I, not the same, but similar, but to be willing to be vulnerable enough to feel safe is, I think, such a key thing to provide people and to be able to be that space for people. And so as we talk about, the space of what we can be and what we can offer, I also am curious about how, and I'll direct this one at you, Jess, how would you define sexual abuse?
Well, Milica, it's a very open-ended question, and it's not right nor wrong, anything that I choose to believe it is or isn't. With my personal experience and finding ways to be able to come across with others who have also had these experiences sometime in their life, and I know sometimes people may think that that's the wrong word to use, is an experience, but in my findings throughout working through a lot of personal issues in the past, I have definitely been able to find strength in truly just being myself. And when that happens, others tend to let their walls down. And sexual abuse for myself or 10 other people that could, however many people is on this line that maybe has some sort of abuse that they've had in the past, can mean so many different things. But one thing we do all have in common is that someone broke our trust. And trust is a very, very delicate thing to lose. And when we truly allow ourselves to break those walls down and be able to speak out about a subject like this, a lot of incredible things can open up for our lives that we're living. I think
that's pretty. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I think that's really poignant. That the one thing that's a commonality is that there was a trust that's broken, and then what occurs, for most people is that trust is also a trust in themselves, like no longer even trusting their own instinct or their own knowing, and that permeates the rest of their life and the choices that they make. Especially if they trust somebody, as an authority, whether there's a child that's the one that's being sexually abused or whatever, where there's usually the person that's the abuser is taking on some kind of role of authority or control position. So, being in a position where you no longer trust anybody, like authority or yourself, then who do you turn to, right? So that creates a whole other aspect of this, which we will talk about. And Mom, I just want to direct that at you. Like, what was it that you are, or how would you define? And it can be a really vague description too. How would you define sexual abuse?
Well, I would agree with Jessica. It's a very wide spectrum of what that could be. For some people, it could just be being touched inappropriately somewhere, or some creepy man kisses you on the cheek, or it can be a wide variety of things. It's the reaction that our body has that's what really matters. And again, it's that trust thing. If we lose trust in our own ability, even though we might have known we shouldn't be in that situation, when that happened, whatever reason, we were there, and we may blame ourselves for that, even though it wasn't our fault in any way, shape, or form. That is, I think, the greatest thing we lose is the trust of ourself, of our own knowing and our own being. And when I used to go into a particular prison and work with a bunch of men who had done a wide variety of crimes, and I asked one of them specifically why he had done what he had done to women, he indicated that it was because he wanted their power. He wanted to take their power away from them so they would feel weak and vulnerable. And I thought a lot of things, which I can't say on the radio. And
you can, actually. It's pretty open on this one. Yeah.
So I was astounded that was his reasoning, and that was all right in his mind. That was, he was going to be in prison for a very long time because of what he did, but that was not okay.
So it's like as if he was proud and could justify it because he somehow. Yeah. It's like as if he thought that it was his. It's like, isn't that
ownership?
effing mental.
Yeah, ownership of the people that he harmed, and I think after that conversation, even though I had done a lot of work on myself and was doing a lot of things to heal myself, I thought, well, if that's what they did it for, I'm going to go out there and be the most powerful being I can be. I didn't know how, there aren't classes really on how to be the powerful being you can be.
No, but we're going to start some. I actually had the idea today. So I'm thinking, how fun would it be if we started something in this area? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge to the both of you. As I was reading this book that's called Not for Sale, it's from Operation Underground Railroad, where the Operation Underground Railroad goes around the world and pulls people, men and women, out of, and children mostly, out of human trafficking situations. And a lot of it is sex trafficking. And I thought, they have these organizations where they have kind of group homes that people can go to after, where they can receive healing. And I thought, wow, I wonder what it would be like to have one of those in our area, because there seems to be a megaton of abuse that goes on, and what a gift it could be to have group meetings or something where people could come freely talk about that and receive different modalities of healing, so that we can have an entire generation coming up. It's a generation of thrivers that have never even had to go through abuse. Although I know that it's still insidious in the schools. I can see it in the bodies whenever I've been in the schools, and it breaks my heart that you can see it and you can't do a thing about it. So I thought, but now I'm thinking, what if I could have a group? So that's my thought of the hour today. I was reading Not for Sale. And that idea of slave ownership, that's another thing, the person saying that he wanted to own their power. So I get that there's a lot of energy that comes up on these things, and for those of you who are feeling like you're just enraged and you want to go slap something, just go ahead, go punch something, go punch a pillow, go punch a wall. Try not to punch another person unless they really deserve it. And because I've done that before, because, sometimes people deserve it. What I would like is for everybody to just have the space to get that you can also change this in your body. And some of the ways is to, like my mom was saying, is to start moving. So if your body is feeling like it's being re-traumatized, even just by listening to this conversation, just start wiggling. Wiggle your body for now and just let things roll. And if you would like greater and more facilitation on that, I will give you contact information in this show so that you can contact any or all of us if you like. And actually, I'll start that right now. So you can contact my mom at mitzvah.ca. You can also find her through email, although she hates email, at danellahessler@aol.com. You could call her. She really was probably, she may answer, she may not. But you can find her phone number on her website at mitzvah.ca. And Miss Jess, I'll let you give your information out, because I don't know what you want to share or don't want to share.
Okay, thank you. You can find me. My name is Jessica McCoy, and I am on social media, both on Facebook and Instagram. You can contact me by email at mccoy.jessica19@ymail.com. I would also like to bring up while I'm on here is that Courage for Freedom on July 30th is International Day to End Trafficking. And we can also, by Project Maple Leaf, hashtag Project Maple Leaf on February 22nd, National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. And I believe that all of us can make a big difference by taking little steps to finding your light within.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That is really awesome. That's coming up. So it's actually right now January 20th. So if you're listening to this as a future podcast, does that event occur every year on the same day, Jess?
Yes, it does.
Awesome. So you guys can look that up, and actually I will likely get the information from Jess so we can put that for any of you who are interested in going to that event. We will see what we can do about getting that information on the Inspired Choices Network site under this particular podcast episode, the Changing the Trauma of Sexual Abuse episode, so that you can find that. And we're actually going to be heading to our last commercial break. We've only got about 15 minutes left of the show, ladies, so thanks for being bright stars and sticking with it. We're heading to our next commercial. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today from the U.S., call 815-880-TALK. That's 815-880-8255. From Canada, dial 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Or send your questions or comments via email to info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to The Pleasure Zone, sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight we've been talking about changing the trauma of sexual abuse. And one of the things that, I don't know if you've been listening for the whole episode, and if you haven't listened to the whole episode, I encourage you to go back to the beginning. We've been kind of sharing some tips randomly throughout the show, and I don't want you to miss them. So one of the tips is actually really about, looking at some self-empowerment tools, and sometimes that's going to classes, sometimes that's taking different things where you can gain some tools and start to get feeling like you're more empowered. Jessica has taken many courses that are empowering and coaching courses that if you would like to work with her directly, you can write to her at mccoy.jessica19@ymail.com, and she can work with you. Actually, she does private sessions. I know she does private sessions at home, but maybe she's busting out and going online too. This is like a new avenue, so it's although she has like worlds of expertise in it, she's now opening her doors to the world for it. And one of the other tools that my mom was sharing was movement. And so if that's something that really speaks to your body and that you would like to give Mitzvah a try, if you'd like to work with my mom, you can find her on mitzvah.ca. I also do that work, and you can find me on milicajelenic.com through the website. So you can contact us. You'll find phone numbers there as well. So what I noticed when you guys we were talking about some of the things that are the commonality of sexual abuse is that there is a trust that's broken, whether it's trust with yourself or trusting others. And so I'm wondering, and I'll start with you, Jess, and then I'll go to you, Moan, so you can think about your answers, is what is a tool that you can share with the listeners about how you can start to regain trust of yourself and others? Is there a tool that you started to, or many tools that you used, and which one do you think you would like to share?
One thing I would definitely like to share, because it stands up right away, is, first of all, trusting that the process that you are taking, there's no right or wrong way of going about your healing, because it's your healing. It's no one else's. And you need to own that and truly not allow the abuse to confine you. I have really found for years, the past 20-some years, I was holding grudges and I was holding on to that feeling that you are no longer in the control. You no longer have control over me. You're not in the driver's seat anymore. I am. And as soon as you can give yourself permission to breathe and to say that none of this is actually any of your fault, and that you can be open to forgiving that person or persons. Because the moment you start putting yourself first and forgiving those that has put you through the traumas that has brought you here today, that's brought you on this show and you're listening right now, the second that you're not forgiving them personally, you're forgiving that time in your life to allow yourself to move on and allow yourself to shine again and give back, because each and every single one of you that are listening right now has a gift to be able to offer others. And it may or may not have come in a form of abuse that has happened in your past. Perhaps you are actually on this earth to be able to share a message because you are strong enough to get through this and shine light on others that feel that there is no hope. So my message to each and every one of you is allow yourself the permission to be able to literally burst out and get rid of, kick that voice that you have in your head that's telling you, who do you think you are? You are a gift. You are a miracle. And you need to grab onto that strength with everything you absolutely have within you and push forward.
I love that. And I love that we're, one of the tools is kicking out that voice that says, who do you think you are? And I'm not necessarily about forgiving the person or their actions, but it's more about for you to allow yourself to move on. I think a lot of times what happens is that people think that forgiving means that you're saying that it's okay. And you're not saying that. What you're doing is you're giving yourself space to breathe, which is freaking huge. So, Mom, what are some of the tools that you are aware of that people can use to start to trust themselves and whether they trust others again or not? I don't care if they trust others. I'm more interested in how can they learn to trust themselves more. What are some things you could share on that front?
So Jessica mentioned the voice in your head that says, who do you think you are? But there's also that voice that tells you to go and do something, like take a course or learn something, or stay out of a place that just doesn't seem right, even though your friends are all saying, no, it's a great thing to go. Listening to that voice has been a profound lesson for me, because it got me out of a lot of bad situations. So all those voices in our head where, who do you think you are, that one could go somewhere and take a rest. But the voice that says, no, you know what? Sometimes I take a course, and because I take some courses that are advanced in certain things, but I haven't even taken the beginning course. And I just think, well, I'll just sit at the back so nobody sees me, and I'll just hide back here. And that's okay. I don't really mind. But I go to learn something, and I always learn something, and it's been profound. Everything I've learned is part of everything I do. And I think the more we learn, no matter what it is, if you learn pottery, who cares? If that makes you happy, then you do that. A lot of people think they have to be a healer or use that term in order to heal themselves. But sometimes healing ourselves is doing the thing we love the most, and whatever that is, climbing a tree, making pottery, whatever, do it. Just do those things.
I love that. So there are so many voices that can show up, and I think for me, what I noticed was that I not only was I hearing voices, but I was hearing like all kinds of entities on top of that. Welcome to the world of being psychic, which everybody who's probably listening to this show right now is too, and everybody who's a guest on today, and even the producer. So for all of us who are hearing those voices, it's learning to distinguish which ones are creating for you in your life and which ones are the ones that are dragging you down. And that is a bit of a process. It's not something that you can just say, well, you're just going to just do this. Well, the thing is, those voices sometimes creep back, so you can always start to ask some questions of those voices, like, who do you think you are? If they're asking you, who do you think you are, I'd start asking them back, who do you think you are anyway? To judge me, to tell me that I can't? Because sometimes I get weird and wild with entities. So, you know, if you're really looking for like, well, how do I stop this voice? It might be more about you having a louder voice or a stronger voice or a more consistent voice, and listening to the voices or the knowing, because a lot of those voices that are saying take this course or take this course or guiding you are actually, it's your knowing. And so listening to, or the ones that say don't go down that alleyway, that's your knowing. So learning to listen to that, and that is something that does diminish when you don't trust you, because that trust voice, that knowing voice is the same. And so learning to find where that voice is again, it's there. It has not left you. I need you guys to know that no matter how much you think you can't hear it, it's still there. It's whispering. And when you shut those other noises off and you start to quiet them down, you can actually hear that voice, that one that speaks louder and that one that's guiding you and that one that's contributing to your life and the one that is actually having you step into your greatness. That voice gets louder, way louder, and that voice becomes like a really great friend. And those other voices that used to be really loud get so quiet that eventually you don't hear them. Or if you do hear them, you notice it, and it can almost make you laugh, and you can just go, well, who do you think you are? If you're trying to judge me, who do you think you are? We've got about 30 seconds left of this show, and I just want to thank you both for your contributions, for your wisdom, for your words, and all your sharing today. And a reminder, too, for anybody who would like to have sessions or would like to, you know, if you'd like to start a group, whether it's online or in person, and you would like to have contributions to move away from sexual abuse, to change that trauma, and you'd like us to contribute to you having that, contact us. Until next week, stay tuned in and turned on.
Thank you for listening to The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.